Hello there, and welcome to Dicey Encounters, and this is another video about role-playing games. Today we're having our own Dicey encounter with something called alignment in D&D. You see what I did there? So alignment in Dungeons and Dragons, you've probably seen on top of your character sheet, if you're new, the word alignment and then a bit to fill out. And you must be thinking, wow, this is really important. It's right next to my name, my race, my class, my eye color. It's like really got to be up there, right, in the important parts of my character. So then you go to the player's handbook and you go to the page which says alignment, and then you find these 9 paragraphs describing these weird titles, describing, this is what an elf is probably is, and this is what this is, and yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's weird. It's you. How can you pick from what you've just read? The game wants you to pick one paragraph of these paragraphs to describe the entire morality and ethics of your character from start to finish. It's quite a big choice to make, and you don't really get much help. Not from the game anyway. And if you ask a dungeon master, well, what does the alignment affect? Why should I pick the alignment? What's going to happen if I pick it wrong? And the dungeon master is probably just gonna, like, doesn't really matter that much. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 7 thoughts and points about alignment, just to kind of give you a fuller picture if you're new to role-playing games. If you already have your own opinions about morality and you've encountered it before and you know what it is, stick around. Maybe you'll learn something or hear a point you haven't considered before. But if not, this is going to be mainly for people who don't really know what the morality system does, or if there's any point to it at all. So the first point is that a lot of dungeon masters ignore it. If you go to role-playing related forums and subreddits and you say, what does lawful neutral mean? How am I supposed to act if I'm chaotic neutral? My other player is supposed to be lawful good, but he pickpocketed me. If that's the case, then you're likely to not get a very sympathetic audience. A lot of dungeon masters think it's just not worth the hassle. It's not worth the hassle of all these issues that come up when you basically tell the players that they need to stick to one code of morality from start to finish. In fact, a lot of people will just say, it's there at the start, it's there, it's like a flavor text along with your weight, height, eye colors, hair colors, flaws. Like, it's just something you say at the beginning and then you just ignore it, for the rest of the game. And then maybe if you haven't played for a month, you'll be like, oh, okay, I'm true neutral and I've got brown hair and apparently I speak in long sentences, I guess. Thought number two, the origin of alignment was different anyway. It's kind of evolved into something that it wasn't intended to be. Nowadays it's on this 3x3 grid where you have lawful and chaotic and good and evil. Back in the day it was just a linear scale. It was lawful and chaotic, and this was more to let the players decide how civilized they were or how kind of nature they are. So of course elves would be chaotic because they live in the forest, whereas humans would live in cities and towns and they would have hierarchies, and then you would have people kind of in the middle, like roaming bands of mercenaries and bandits who kind of do both. It's weird now because they will describe elves as being chaotic. But then when I think of elves, I think of the Tolkien elves, who are incredibly civilized. They're like one of the most civilized races in Middle-earth. I think the D&D elves are more like the Scoia'tael from The Witcher, where they're kind of like guerrilla fighters who, will fight dirty tactics. And, when they think of civilization, they think of cruelty and this hierarchy which they're always not a part of, that's been kind of put upon them by humans. So my third thought about alignment is that it's kind of intrinsically linked with the gods. Well, it used to be. Each deity has an alignment So you have a good gods and evil gods and neutral gods. Um, so if you were a paladin or a cleric and you got your abilities from your deity, if you stopped being that alignment, then that god would just be like, well, you know, you're on your own, mate. And it's up to you to get back in his good graces or stick with what you got. And it's not like in 5th edition where any character with a half decent strength or dex modifier can pick up a crossbow and like be decent. If you were a warlock and you saved a puppy by accident or by choice, you were fucked. Like seriously, you got to better go and like throw some puppies down a well just to get your evil patron back on side. Like the great old one is not going to appreciate you using your powers for good. And so nowadays you have paladins who can be neutral and even evil because of the new oaths, and they kind of get their power from um, some like in the warm fuzzy feeling inside or something. Like there's no bit in the player's handbook that says paladins get their powers from gods anymore. They have to adhere to any gods or codes. Paladins can just do what they like, which kind of was the whole point of paladins. I thought you could now just be um, basically a fighter that can heal, and that's kind of what they are. My fourth point is that the party tends to um, generate its own morality anyway. Like it has a shared morality. Like if players play together for a few sessions, an equilibrium will be struck, and you'll kind of be like, okay, this is how we're going to operate. We're all kind of okay with, this is how we execute prisoners if they're really bad and we don't want them to come and backstab us later. But we won't kill, people who are just bandits or whatever. We'll send them on their way. We will steal from these people or not. They will agree that, when it comes to the forces of evil, as in alignment evil, then no quarter is shown. And we will not try to strike a bargain or will never work with them. And, that normally works quite well unless there's, one person or two people who are trying to be antagonistic with the party all the time. Maybe it's one of those flaws. So it kind of just feels bad and blocks play when, as a DM, you sort of stop the party and just say to them, well, actually, matey, fighter, I know you're neutral good, and I know you wouldn't do this because you're neutral good, and this means that you don't do these things. And it's just gonna be really like, ugh. The player's not gonna appreciate that they wrote down 2 words at character creation 5 months ago, and now you get to tell them what they would and wouldn't do. And that's something that always comes up. This, alignment friction where, not only between the DM and the players, where the DM will say, you can't do this, you have to do that, but also between in the party as well, when you'll have chaotic neutral rogues and lawful good paladins. That's a classic combo for a lot of arguments and a lot of hissy fits. At least if it was, back in the day when you had civilized and chaotic, at least, a human noble and a druid would be able to, both have a civilized discussion with each other about the benefits and drawbacks of each side. Like no side is particularly right or wrong. Both sides have their drawbacks and weaknesses, and you can see those kind of people sort of having a mutual respect of each other. Whereas if you have someone good and evil, they're never going to see eye to eye. They're never going to understand the other one's perspective, ever. And this is why, lawful good paladin used to be a buzzword for like horrible Mr. Buzz Killingtons. My 5th point is that most systems do not have alignment in them. And you can always tell a good game mechanic, because you can see how it permeates across different systems. When one thing gets something right and you see it like an explosion, like just in loads of different other games. And D&D got so much right, and so much, we have to be thankful to Gary Gygax for making the systems that have worked for decades. But alignment is just something that most systems just dropped. It doesn't stop it so much, and also it relies on the players kind of sticking to their own character ideas, because when you make a character and you have to put it through the prism of alignment, it might kind of make the character worse. And you'll see all of these kind of alignment charts with like Game of Thrones characters or Star Wars characters or Harry Potter characters. And then you'll also see ones with like Batman or Superman, and they'll be in every single fucking square. Like Batman goes from being lawful good to chaotic evil, like in the breadth of his whole arcs. So real 3D characters, in-depth characters, vary wildly, based on what they're doing. So I think players whose characters will do something because of alignment kind of makes it less interesting, as opposed to a character doing something, sinking to a low, but then also, rising to a high because the character wants to, because the character determines that they want to, rather than it saying on the character sheet, you have to be good all the time. My sixth point is that it's really open to interpretation, which makes it really tricky and makes you want more, stuff about it in the player's handbook to guide you, but it's just not there. So, if you go to the aforementioned role-playing game forums and you ask about morality, then no doubt people will start talking about the whole goblin baby scenario, where you've killed some goblins and they've left behind some goblin babies, and they are alignment evil. So as good characters, that lawful good paladin, he can totally kill those babies, right? Because he's good and they're evil. And his god will totally be up for that. Or is good supposed to be about being good rather than destroying evil? Is evil all about wanton mayhem, destruction, murder? I've heard the interpretation that good means selfless and evil means selfish. So it really can be seen from multiple different ways. And that brings me on to my last point. What the bloody hell is true neutral? So if lawful is being civilized, chaotic is being uncivilized, and if good is being selfless and evil is being selfish, then what is true neutral? Like, can you imagine trying to be a player who's like, I have to be not selfish or selfless, and I have to be not civilized but not uncivilized, and I have to walk this weird tightrope, like, it's that I can't. Or is neutral supposed to be someone who varies and does both? Maybe is it someone who does both, but isn't that kind of what everyone wants to be and is actually in real life? And don't mention bloody Treebeard, because Treebeard is always brought up as the true neutral exemplar, and he can't be true neutral because he goes and he takes out Isengard. And he's also a bloody tree living in a forest. Like, how can he be civilized? How can he be lawful if he lives in a forest and he's a tree? He definitely believes in the forces of nature and chaos. And that's why the Entwives left, because they were like, let's make gardens and nice things. And the Ents were like, no, just let them be. Let them do what they like. But then again, Treebeard like listens to Gandalf and does what Gandalf says. And he's also like acting on revenge against Isengard. But he's not, because the Ents want to kill orcs, because like the Ents kill orcs unequivocally. So they know they're evil. As you can see, alignment is really complicated and weird. And you will have to have this conversation with your more passionate players, if you include it in the game, and really make people stick by what they're doing. I've had players who have wanted to, tie prisoners to beds and then set the bed on fire, and I've had to say, well, you're chaotic good, so you can't do that. But like, who cares? Like, if that person said they were chaotic good, 5 sessions ago, maybe people change. Maybe people have low days and they just want to set people on fire. I say let them. So, you have choices. You can leave it out. You can just leave it as kind of like, like a flavor text, what your intentions were at the beginning. Or you can, come up with a morality system of your own, and you will say, okay, this is what I mean when I say lawful good. This is what I mean when I say chaotic evil. So you better, this is what we're going to stick to. Or you can just take one of the fictional character ones that I described, and just use that as a representation as well. Like, everyone knows Han Solo. If we're saying Han Solo is chaotic neutral, then that's what I want you to keep in mind. We know, Princess Leia is lawful good. Stick to that. Darth Vader is lawful evil. Darth Maul is chaotic evil. It's already too complicated. So that's it for this video. If you want to read it as well in blog form, you can head to dicyencounters.com. I write all of my videos up first as blogs, and then I do them in a video format. So then you have the choice. So that's all from me this week. I hope you pick an alignment and never stick to it. And I'll see you in the next episode. Until then.